You know how hard it is to get a serial company to sponsor mass murder?
Wow.
You ring the
We are talking Boy Kills World, and this is the new movie that stars Bill Skarsgård, who also was an executive producer of this, along with Sam Raimi. And how to describe this movie? Here's the logline, I would say. This is Scott Pilgrim meets John Wick in The Hunger Games. Is the easiest way I would kind of try and describe it. Effectively, it's a hyper-violent science fiction action film. And here's the setup. It is a totalitarian future where we have this Famke Janssen's character, who is kind of like this iron-fisted ruler who has effectively taken over some type of area. It's not really clear where it is and anything like that, but she's kind of the ruler of this particular land, you might say, and she kind of rules with an iron fist. And every year, to kind of keep the locals in line, she effectively does what's called a culling, which is where she kills a number of her enemies, be they children, whatever, in a kind of public execution to try and keep the locals in line. And we see that Bill Skarsgård's character, when he was a boy, was part of this kind of situation, you might say, and he manages to survive, but he is deaf and mute through effectively the experience, shall we say. And he ends up kind of being trained by this shaman who is out in the woods somewhere, out in the forest, to become an assassin, a killer, to get revenge on Famke Janssen's character and her whole family and her kind of paramilitary organisation. Eventually he's training, gets good enough and sets on a mission of revenge. He makes a couple of allies along the way, and there's plenty of fist fights, gunfights and bloodshed. Now what will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? Now, if you like that description, John Wick meets Scott Pilgrim in The Hunger Games. It's a pretty accurate kind of idea, I think, what to expect. It's a very hyper-violent movie. This is pure action spectacle. Ballistic blood, bullets, carnage. It's all of that. And it's a very fast-moving... it never kind of settles down into have like long periods without any action. When we do see the action, it's always very kind of stylized, with kind of kinetic kind of camera work, sort of typical of kind of Raimi, to be fair, although he didn't direct this. You know, whizzing around, and it has this kind of irreverent kind of style, sense of humour. One of the key elements here is Bill Skarsgård's character, as I've mentioned, is a deaf mute. So he doesn't actually speak, he has kind of monologues in his head. And he's adopted this kind of voice that he's kind of this video game, a kind of Mortal Kombat style video game, that he used to like as a kind of child, and that's how he kind of talks and kind of rationalises things in his head. He also kind of imagines his younger sister as a kind of a child that he kind of talks to in his head and things like that to give him kind of dialogue sequences. But again, it's through a voiceover, not actually Skarsgård delivering lines, shall we say. So he's a very kind of bizarre and messed up kind of protagonist, but he is an expert killer in a variety of styles. So it's a very kinetic, fast-paced movie. If you like lots of action, lots of stylized action, again, like John Wick, likes kind of the Scott Pilgrim kind of fight scenes, with a sprinkling of this kind of like strange pop culture references and kind of sense of humour and kind of science fiction kind of overtones, there's a lot to enjoy here. I mean, this is a pure spectacle movie. It is a fun movie. It is very much a popcorn film. It isn't taking itself particularly kind of seriously, although there are a couple of serious moments in it. But it is just a fun, irreverent ride. Now, one of the critiques I'm going to tell you in a minute is I think this movie maybe is a little bit lacking in tension, you might say. But I will say, without kind of spoiling anything, it does manage to kind of have a little bit of that towards the end of the movie. when things are revealed and you think, okay, you know, stakes I feel are a little bit higher now. But for the most part, it is somewhat of a breezy, not taking itself kind of too seriously, very kind of like over-the-top fun movie that's not too concerned about plot development and things like that, but it's not trying to be. This is the thing with this movie. This is not a movie which is trying to be a deep philosophical movie about adult themes and things like that. There is a bit of family. This is your kind of, you know, your Fast and Furious kind of family and vengeance movie to a certain degree, but it's not much kind of deeper than that, to be honest. But it's not trying to be, and I think it succeeds in the movie that it is trying to be. That might not be for everyone, but I do think for the movie that it's trying to achieve here, I think it does it pretty well. And I've got to say, it's visually speaking, it's absolutely an entertaining movie all the way through. The fight scenes are amazingly choreographed. The stunts are incredible. The kind of the mix of kind of the cinematography, the camera movement really make this a kind of a joy to behold in many ways. And again, if you're a fan of the John Wick films, this is very much like a fantastical version of it, even though John Wick arguably is quite fantastical to start with. But it's kind of like, you like that if you like these added Hunger Games style kind of science fiction elements. Where does this movie lack in certain elements? As I've kind of alluded to, I think this is very much a kind of a popcorn film, but it isn't particularly deep. It does have a few moments here and there, but I would say the bulk of the running times, it feels kind of a little bit inconsequential in regards to kind of plot. And I feel one of the elements here, this kind of fun tone that it has. There's lots of faceless kind of stormtroopers that are just killed and everything like that. We never really feel any sense of genuine kind of danger, I would say, maybe with the exception of one or two sequences, which makes the stakes feel low in a degree. Because you never really feel this movie is taking the threat particularly kind of seriously. And I do feel it's a little bit, things aren't particularly kind of fleshed out. It gets a little better towards the end in regards to that specifically, but for the most part, you're feeling this is a fun movie with lots kind of going on, but you feel it's a little bit of a surface level movie in some ways. So you know, it's an enjoyable film if you can accept that. The kind of the conceit here with the kind of the voiceover and the Bill Skarsgård talking to his kind of imaginary younger sister, I have to say I think it was a little bit overplayed at times, particularly the kind of the young sister. It is kind of like relevant to the story's plot, but I have to say it was a little bit. I didn't really particularly like those scenes all that much for me personally. Although it does inform part of the story, I'll give it that. So overall, I will say this movie is an entertaining one, and the movie that it's trying to be in its visual style, I think it achieves its goals. It's not going to be forever because this is just a very kind of surface level movie in many ways. You know, as I say, it does have a few elements, particularly towards the end, where it maybe has a little bit more kind of going on, but for the most part, you know, you can just enjoy it as a bimbo of a movie. It looks great, it's fun, but you may be lacking a little bit in depth there. But I will give it a 7 out of 10 because I think it succeeds in so many ways. You know, it's hard not to kind of like give it props for the movie that it is trying to be. So a 7 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? Would you see it? What did you think of it? Please let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.